Hello, welcome to Virtual Startup Lab sessions. We'll continue our discussion on sources of funds, and the focus of this presentation is equity capital. We know that the sources of funds can be broadly classified into debt and equity, and we have seen that equity has a residual claim. They have the right to vote and they have right to dividend, and they are the owners of the company. The equity holders become equity holders by purchasing the equity shares, and the money collected through equity share is sale of equity share is called equity capital. So equity capital represents the ownership capital, and equity shareholders collectively own the company. By default, the share capital means equity share capital. They enjoy the rewards and they take the risk, so they are also called the risk takers. However, the liability is limited to the extent of their capital. So the liability of a shareholder is limited to the extent they have contributed and the profit generated. However, they can get as much profit because they are the residual reward taker. The equity shareholders have some rights given in the Companies Act. The right to income, right to control, preemptive right, and right in liquidation. We'll take one by one. The right to income. Equity shareholders have a residual claim to the income of the firm. The income left after meeting the claims of all other investors and stakeholders belongs to the equity shareholder. The income of an equity holder may be retained by the firm or may be distributed as dividend. Equity holders, as mentioned, are entitled to dividend, but the dividend decision is not taken by the shareholders but by the management. So if management decides, they may not distribute the dividend but retain the profit for further expansion. Then the right to control. Unlike other investors, equity holders have a right to control. As the owners of the company, they elect the board of directors, and the board of directors manage the company, and they have the right to vote in every resolution. And equity shareholders exercise an indirect control over the operations of the company, particularly if it is a large company. The shareholders are dispersed all over the country or the world. The management is in the hands of the board. The ownership is widely dispersed. But in case of a small startup, it is possible that all equity holders may together manage the company, or some of these shareholders play an active role as the directors. However, the principle stays that the ownership is with the shareholders, the management is with the board of directors. There is an interesting and important right of shareholder is the preemptive right. The existing shareholders have a right to get the first opportunity to purchase on a pro-rata basis any additional issue of equity shares. This right enables the existing shareholders to maintain their proportional ownership. That whenever a company issues further issue of shares, then the existing shareholders have a right to be given the shares first. They may not take it, but they have a right to deny that. And those shares are generally called rights issue or the rights shares. We'll have a presentation exclusively on rights issue in one of the sessions. Right in liquidation, equity shareholders have a residual claim over the assets of the company, just like they have a residual claim over the income. They do have residual claim over the assets of the company in the event of liquidation. In other words, equity shareholders will receive the asset value only if there is any asset left after making all the payments to all share stakeholders. For example, the statutory authorities, debenture holders, secured lenders, unsecured lenders, even preferred shareholder. So assets at the time of liquidation are sold and the money collected is distributed among all other stakeholders and investors first, then any money left will be distributed among the equity holders. So in this session we have seen the nature of characteristic of equity shares. Later on we'll pick up a company and understand the equity capital over a period of time. Thank you very much.